Well, good evening, everybody. It is wonderful to have you all here in person and joining us online. Thank you so much for coming here to what is the second of our three statewide presentations on the Farm Bill. My name is Andrew Musgrave, and I have the pleasure of serving as the director of the Catholic Social Action Office for the Archdiocese of Cincinnati. And want to just thank again everyone for being here and thank all those who were part of making this event happen. For those of you that don't know, this partnership, this group came together as part of an effort through the Catholic Conference of Ohio to mobilize across the state people all over Ohio to learn about what the Farm Bill is, and then to be able to advocate with their elected officials for the Farm Bill to include or to be undergirded by the morals and the values that we have as Catholics. And so on behalf of the CCO, the Diocese of Columbus, Cleveland, and the Archdiocese of Cincinnati, Catholic Rural Life, Bread for the World, the USCCB, and here at the Community of the Good Shepherd, I welcome you and thank you for being here. Pope Francis, on his World Day of Peace message back in January of 2014, said, "It is a truly pressing duty to use the earth's resources in such a way that all may be free from hunger." In 1938, our government approved a farm bill to assist farmers during the Great Depression. The Farm Bill today is an expansive piece of legislation that reaches into the lives of every single American. Farmers across America, like many folks right here in our archdiocese, take pride in farming and taking care of the land. They truly see their vocation as a gift from God, and they are committed to feeding people. But the Farm Bill is not just for farmers and ranchers. It provides ways to help people it provides ways to provide food aid to people who need it both domestically and internationally. This evening, we come together both in person and virtually to learn about what the current Farm Bill is, what it does, and how we can make sure that our priorities, namely dignity, equality, respect, and compassion, are reflected in its mandates and words. And this last piece, also known as advocacy, is critical for who we are as a people of faith. Advocacy provides opportunities for people of faith to speak their faith in public, bringing it to bear on a public issue. Advocacy can help develop church leaders and teach people how to wrestle with scripture, theology, and relationships. Our advocacy as Catholics will draw attention to our faith priorities to end hunger and creates a more sustainable world for us and for our neighbors as one human family. With that understanding, I'll invite us to begin in prayer. So we pray in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Gracious and living God, we thank you for our ancestors, for their wisdom and knowledge to know the land. We give you thanks for all of creation and know that you charged us to be your stewards of air, land, water, and all living things. We thank you for those who grow food and farm. We thank you for those who labor in the fields. We thank you for those who bring crops to market. We thank you for merchants who give us access to your bounty. We thank you for the hands that make and prepare our daily bread. Give us nourishment to do your work in the world, to feed ourselves so that we can feed others. May our work and faith in you create that heavenly community where we are all fed. Amen. Father and Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Before I get going, I want to just say a word of gratitude to all those who were part of our planning committee here tonight. Pat Hornsmeyer from our Catholic Rural Life Committee, Sister Christine Pratt, who's also part of Rural Life Committee and works in our Social Action Office. Thankful for their work and the work from folks from Cleveland and Columbus who are part of it. And I also want to thank Zach Blanford, who is here from Senator Landsman's office, who came to join us as well and hear about what these priorities are as well. So Zach, thanks for being here with us. So I have some good news and I have some bad news. If you like listening to me talk, then it's good news. If you don't like listening to me talk, then it's bad news. We had a wonderful keynote speaker, Nicole Schmidt, who's one of the state organizers for Bread for the World, lined up to speak at all three of the events. And she was at the event in Cleveland last week, and God willing, she'll be at the event in Columbus next week. However, this morning at 7 a.m., she emailed me and let me know that her children have stomach flu, and she was not going to be able to make it down to us. Therefore, you're going to hear not only me doing the introductory parts that you would have heard anyway, whether you like it or not, you're also going to hear me doing the PowerPoint, not as well as Nicole, but doing the keynote as well. So I apologize in advance for those of you who don't want to hear me talk more. And for those of you who like it, you're welcome. Before I get into the keynote, though, it's really important, I think, that we couch this presentation and this work around the Farm Bill in Catholic social teaching. Now, looking around here at the audience, I know that all of you know what Catholic social teaching is, and I imagine many of you that are joining us online know it as well. But just to be clear, Catholic social teaching is that collection of teachings, of writings that have come from the Vatican and from our bishops and from the faithful that address issues going on in the world, that read the signs of the time, interpret them through scripture, and guide us and give us structure on how we can be in the world, how we can live our faith out. Catholic social teaching has had several different iterations of what's included and how it's described. Most commonly nowadays, it's under these 7 themes. And I very briefly want to touch on those 7 themes and kind of connect them to what the Farm Bill is about to kind of, again, couch what we're going to be talking about for the rest of the evening. So the first and the primary theme of Catholic social teaching is the life and dignity of every single person. That we believe that every single person is sacred, was created in God's image and likeness, and that we all have a fundamental dignity that is immutable, that can never be changed, comes from God, and is in all of us, in every single one of us. And we have a right, therefore, to life, and it follows then that we have a right to food that sustains our dignity and sustains our ability to live and be in the world. The second theme is the call to family, community, and participation. So this theme tells us that not only is every human being sacred, but we're also social, right? We are connected. Our social nature is what draws us together. We think about God as a triune God, being these 3 persons that are all fueled by love and are created in love. We too, to be like God, must be in relation. We must be social. And that is how we achieve the common good, is by being social and working together as community. And this theme looks at 3 different justices: commutative, which is a fairness in relationships and exchanges; distributive, to make sure that the goods we have are distributed and reach all people, especially those people on the margins; and then social justice, which is that all people have an opportunity to participate in what's going on. And so this emphasis on family, community, and participation really leads us to the idea that we need to be aware of where our food is coming from and making sure that our food and our resources is getting out to the people, our neighbors, both locally, nationally, and internationally. The third theme is the dignity of work and the rights of workers. So in this theme, we talk about the economy serving people, not the other way around. And we are called to be engaged in productive work that contributes to society, that gives us value and allows us to be a part of society that exists. And in that, it means we have a right to decent wages. We have a right to safe working conditions, having health care, time off, et cetera. And we have a right to unionize and join together to make sure that our voices are heard in our workplace. And because we believe in this, it's also important to recognize that across the entire food system, which I'll talk about a little bit later on, there are a lot of people who are employed or work in the food system who are not treated justly, who are not treated fairly, who are misused, who are marginalized, and this Farm Bill works towards addressing that as well. The fourth theme, excuse me, is the option for the poor and the vulnerable. What this says is that we have to have a priority concern for all those who are poor and vulnerable among us. And those who are powerless, those who are on the margins, are really Jesus in distressing disguise, as Teresa of Calcutta said it. And when we go to those people who are on the margins and are marginalized, we are going to Jesus and we are being God's love to them. And another connection to the Farm Bill is it is important to look at how our global agricultural system affects the weakest participants in our community. And again, you look at farm workers in the US, you look at people around the world who are harvesting and collecting food, but don't have access to actually eating that food. And we see that those who are on the lowest kind of socioeconomic levels are the ones who are most being victimized by our food system. The next theme is solidarity, right? We are our brothers and our sisters' keepers. We are part of one human family, regardless of where we live. And because of that, we have an obligation to look out for each other, to care for each other. And when we see people who are hungry and suffering, we have to look at what we can do to rectify this injustice. And then the final theme of Catholic social teaching is respect for creation, or care for creation, right? We believe that all creation is a gift from God. Everything around us, the people, the animals, the air, the soil, the sun, all of it is from God, and it is to be praised and it is to be cared for. We're called to have special reverence and respect for what all of God's creation. And whenever we misuse creation, it really betrays the gift that God has given to us. And you look at how different farming practices have evolved over time, and how we abuse the land, and how we don't take care of what we have and aren't using the land in the healthiest way, both to serve those who are alive now, but also to serve those who come after us. And so you can see all these themes touch on the priorities of the Farm Bill and talk about these three main ideas of the Farm Bill. And that brings me now to our keynote, to our major idea about the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill really focuses on three big ideas: food, farms, and foreign aid. Now, we'll get into each of the three of those things, but before I get into it, I want to just mention that I've been really blessed in my work for the church and in the nonprofit sector to encounter a wide variety of people. And unfortunately, a lot of the folks that I have encountered have been victimized by the food system in some way. When I was back in Milwaukee and I would see the folks who were coming to soup kitchens or coming to food pantries because they couldn't afford the food that they needed to sustain themselves and for their children, or they lived in a place that didn't have fresh fruits, fresh vegetables, nutrient dense food in their communities. And so they had to come other places to find that food. I saw these folks who were hungry and deserved to have food, but didn't get it because of the way that our food system is structured. I also have had the opportunity to travel internationally a bit. And actually just this past fall, I had the opportunity to go to Kenya with Bread for the World and a project that was looking to address global hunger and care for creation. And in that time that I was in Kenya, I went out to visit some of the farms outside of the metropolitan area and saw so many farms that have been decimated by the effects of climate change, who have no access to water, who have had to make drastic changes in the crops they grow, drastic changes in the way that their families and their ancestors have raised food for so many years. And it's because of the impact of what we've done to the earth on the effects of climate change that we've had. And it's tragic. And thankfully, there are a lot of people who are doing good work and who are working to address these ills. And again, we'll talk about that a little bit in this keynote. But just to say, it is impossible, I think, for most people who have their eyes open and who are going about the world to not see folks who are being misused or being treated poorly by the food system. And the Farm Bill in different ways really seeks to address those ills and to help us to have a more just and equitable food system. So on that note, let's get into the Farm Bill. So the Farm Bill is comprehensive, and it has a number of different parts that go along with it. And so what's more helpful, a lot of people talk about the food chain or other parts of the food system, but it really is helpful to think about it as a system. And if I say food system, in general terms, it really means the path that brings the food from farm to fork. What brings the farm from where it grows, where it's harvested, to where we are. And so the food system is all those pieces that come along with it. And so the food system involves the growing of food, the harvesting of food, the processing and the packaging of food, transporting, marketing, consuming, and disposing of food. So a whole myriad of industries touch on the food system. Another way of thinking about the food system is what the food system should be, what the world agrees is needed to feed people, and what the world needs to end hunger. And unfortunately, we know that that food system that exists now is failing in significant ways. And so we have to think about all of these pieces together. We can't just grow better food. We can't just do better with food waste. We have to look at all the different components of the food system to really achieve a more just and a more equitable way of feeding folks in the world. And because so much of our food system is interconnected, we can't look at it just on a local level or on a national level. We have to look at this across the globe, because there is food that is crossing borders, national borders, international borders all the time, as it is grown in certain places and needed in other places where they don't grow food. So the Farm Bill, and I should have said this before, I think I mentioned this, but this PowerPoint comes from Bread for the World, who's a great partner on addressing Farm Bill advocacy and has been a partner for a long time with the USCCB and several other organizations. And so that's why, you're seeing very appropriately their branding, and this is kind of how they approach it as well. So just understand, I guess, that background. So let's look at the American food system and what the major challenges are in the American food system. So there's several things in categories. So the first category to look at is what we grow. If you look at what is grown in the US and how the land is used, only about 2% of cropland is used to grow fruits and vegetables. These are the most nutrient-dense products that we need for our health and that help to address health inequities that exist. What most of the crops that are grown, about 60% of the crops, are commodity crops, which are these really highly processed food that is used for animal feed and ethanol, and it comes out in the forms of corn, soybeans, sugars, wheat, and potatoes. So foods that are not nutrient dense, that are not nearly as beneficial and healthful to people. What we need to do is really look at how we can increase the amount of food, the amount of land that's being used to grow these nutrient-dense fruits and vegetables. And so looking at potentially doubling that would be a great way for us to move forward. Another issue is looking at how the farms affect the environment. About 26% of all greenhouse gases come from agriculture and food production. Most of us, I'm sure, have heard about how livestock, cows, chickens, others contribute to that, but also in the machinery and the way that food is processed contributes to it. In addition, about 6% of our greenhouse gases come from food waste. So we have a significant amount of food that gets thrown away every year. And you'll notice that slide in America, about 40% of American food is wasted. So think about the number of people we know that are going hungry, and the fact that 2 out of 5 meals are being thrown away every year. And that food goes into landfills and goes into garbage bins, and that creates that has a negative effect on the greenhouse gases as well. So what we grow is having a significant impact on the environmental impact as well. It also has a significant impact on racial inequity that exists in our country. In 1910, there were about 218,000 Black farmers who had about 15 million acres of land. In 2007, just under 100 years later, there were only 28,000 Black farmers, and they only had about 2.9 million acres of land. So the systems and the processes by which we control farmland is perpetuating and exacerbating the racial injustice that exists in our country. Only about 3.3% of farmers are Hispanic. Now, that's obviously folks who are either owning or in partial ownership of farms. That doesn't include folks who are day laborers, farm work laborers who have no ownership stake and are not in any way benefiting from the sales of food, but they're there. And another issue is how it affects Native peoples. Native peoples are about 4 times as likely to be food insecure as white folks are. And obviously, these are folks who have been here and their peoples, their ancestors, far longer than the white folks that are here. But now, because of the way things have the injustices that have occurred in our country, even though they have owned lots of land, they are still 4 times as likely to be food insecure because of the way that our food systems work. So that's the reality and the challenges of our food system. So what are the results of that food system? What comes out of that? Well, none of this stuff is going to be surprising, I don't think, to you. About 38 million people face food insecurity in the US, and that includes about 12 million children. So 12 million children in the US every day are facing food insecurity, a lack of access to nutrient-dense, healthy food. We also obviously know that the pandemic had a significant effect on the availability of food. A lot of folks that were working in the food industry were considered essential workers and still had to work, but you ended up with a lot higher incidence of COVID and illness amongst those workers. And those that were not working had a negative impact on the movement of food across the country and across the globe. There's also the reality that in the US, food insecurity is a major health factor for type 2 diabetes. It's often surprising. I heard I've talked to people about this internationally, for people to find out that the higher the level of food insecurity and the lower the socioeconomic status, the greater the possibility of obesity and diabetes that come along with it happen, because folks that don't have access to nutrient-dense, healthy food are eating this processed, low nutrient food, and it ends up having significant health impacts as well. And that is borne out. You see in that last square on the end, that the odds of a child being obese are 5 times higher when they come from food insecure households, as opposed to those who come from food secure households. And to touch back on that issue of racial justice, there was a survey done a few years ago. About 59% of Native children are obese because of their lack of access to healthy food. There's also the reality that low income and BIPOC, that's Black, Indigenous, and people of color communities, are more likely than high income white populations to live in food swamps. If you don't know what a food swamp is, it's a place that has lots of corner markets and lots of fast food, but it's a swamp because it doesn't have any of the good stuff. It doesn't have the things that people need, or very low availability of the foods for folks to be able to get what they need to be healthy. These food swamps are really saturated with unhealthy food choices, and because that's what's available and what is often cheapest in those areas, you end up with, again, these higher instances of obesity and diabetes and more food insecurity. And then the last piece is that, unfortunately, there is a dearth of research that's been done to look at how Farm Bill and farm policies are relating diet-related diseases, and that's from a number of different factors, but it really limits at times our ability to look at maybe with even greater clarity what the Farm Bill is, and know what policies we need to more significantly emphasize to address some of these injustices. So that's a kind of a down point, but just to know that we're looking at these Farm Bill policies with the best eye that we can, but there's a lot of research that still could be done to help us understand more about how those policies affect food insecurity and the health effects of it. So let's look at the Farm Bill and as it is now. So just a reminder, the Farm Bill is reauthorized every 5 years. So the last authorization of the Farm Bill was in 2018. And so the numbers that you're going to see up here on the screen are a projection, because we don't know all the final numbers, of between 2018 and 2023 of this current manifestation of the Farm Bill. As you can see at the top of the chart, the Farm Bill accounts for about $428 billion. As you can see also, the most significant chunk, about 76% of the Farm Bill funding goes towards nutrition. And the most notable or most obvious aspect of that is SNAP. SNAP is food stamps. And about 2/3 of the money from the Farm Bill, so that's a significant chunk of that 76%, goes towards SNAP. What most of you know is that SNAP is the flagship nutrition program for the US and people accessing food. But what that also means is that it really also doubles as a healthcare program. Because if people are not getting healthy food and aren't able to eat, don't have access to that food, it causes, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of significant health detriments, problems in their healthcare, in their health. So that's where most of the money for the the Farm Bill goes, is towards nutrition. The other smaller parts, as you can see, there's about 9% that covers crop insurance. There's about 7% that covers commodities. And there's about 7% that addresses with conservation. I'll point out then that last 1%, which is about just over $4 billion, which is not nothing, but it's a small drop in the bucket, really goes to the other miscellaneous things, which includes the foreign aid part of it. So our foreign aid as a part of the US budget is less than 1%. And a big significant part of that comes from the Farm Bill, but again, it's just a small piece of the Farm Bill, which is a small part of the whole overall US budget. There's the current state. There's the reality. That's what our food system looks like. That's the effects of the food system. And this is how we currently use the money in the Farm Bill to address our part both locally, nationally, and internationally in the farm. So let's look at some of the positive things. Let's look at what the Farm Bill does to address some of the injustices that exist in the world. First off, do you know that about 1 in 10 people in the world go to bed hungry? So 10% of the world's population of what do we have now? Almost 9 billion people, something like that, 8-something billion people. 10% of them are going to bed hungry every single night. The US is the leading contributor to those global efforts to help save lives and relieve suffering among people who have confront hunger and malnutrition. US foreign aid helps meet a lot of immediate needs, and it helps to support countries' efforts to cope with the causes of hunger. And I want to stop here on this point because, when we talk about Catholic social teaching and we talk about the work that we do, there are two aspects. There's the 2 feet, the charity and the justice. And thankfully, the Farm Bill does both aspects of that. It addresses both needs. It has money to help feed people right away. And thinking about this on an international level, it has money that goes to help provide food for people internationally, but it also goes to help improve the systems, improve the farming, improve the techniques so that people can grow food in their own country and don't need as much charity. When I was in Kenya, I mentioned earlier, one of the farms that I visited that was flourishing had become part of a program that was supported by monies that were coming from the Farm Bill and some other international players, and experts in farming had come in and helped these farmers figure out how to better irrigate their farms, how to raise their animals, how to grow crops. And while their neighbors' farms, these folks who had, for whatever reason, not chosen to be a part of this program, were really looking quite decimated and growing virtually nothing, this farm of these folks who were the beneficiaries of some of the resources that come from the Farm Bill was doing remarkably well. And so the money coming out of the Farm Bill internationally is both feeding people now and equipping them and empowering them to continue to be fed into the future. Notable, the main causes of global hunger are conflict, climate change, and shocks to the system like COVID-19 or the way that Russia has invaded Ukraine about a little over a year ago. So the US is obviously doing its best to address some of these things, but there are some of these aspects of the the things affecting the food system that the U.S. Farm Bill doesn't have a lot of work to do. It doesn't have a lot of capacity to address, though it does in some ways address some of the climate change pieces. And then the last note on here is that the U.S. over the last 70 years has helped to reach over 4 billion people in over 150 countries to help them in accessing food. So there's been a lot of work that's been done well by the U.S. to help address the food insecurity that exists around the world. So what are we asking for? What are we looking for? Bread lays it out as the 4 R's. So the 4 R's that they're looking for are, the first is to reauthorize, and that is to the Farm Bill to reauthorize, especially the international food aid programs that address acute and chronic hunger and malnutrition. So making sure that these bills, now an important point to make here, that authorization and actual funding are 2 different things. And so that's a kind of a presentation and a conversation for another time, but at least to start off by reauthorizing these programs and making sure that so many of these different pieces of legislation that are part of the Farm Bill are reauthorized for foreign aid. I think it's also, this is a good opportunity to step back for a second. When you look at what actually goes into the Farm Bill and all the different bills, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of different programs that have slightly different variations and different aspects of addressing the Farm Bill. And I'd encourage you to look those up and see what different parts are addressed. I'm going to mention a couple of them in this presentation, but it's important to know that if you're moving forward, as you're doing some advocacy, and if you're really get into this, and I hope you do, and you start learning about some of the other specific programs that are in there, there are some specific asks that often Catholic Relief Services and the USCCB will name specifically greater funding for this program, It's helpful to know that. But just right now to say to you, there are, when you say the Farm Bill, we're talking about a collection of dozens and dozens of programs that all address different aspects of the food system. Number 2, reforming it. It is helping. Bread recommends that we help to make improvements in the Farm Bill that will help the programs that are funded by them to be more effective and more efficient. And especially notable in this category is, what are we doing to make food healthier? And especially, what are we doing to make sure that more healthy food is getting into schools, and what kind of healthy food is getting to mothers and young children and the families? So helping to reform and improve those parts of the Farm Bill that are addressing the growth and the distribution of nutrient-dense food. The third piece is on research. So looking at the humanitarian and developmental needs that are going on globally, and then specifically looking at how we can improve nutrition and adapt the impacts of climate change, because climate change is, again, significantly impacting the food system. And when they're doing that research, if they're using the money to do some research, make that data available so that people around the globe and domestically as well can get that information and be able to better advocate and better do work to address the food insecurity that exists. And then the last one is to provide replenishment. And this is one of the specific bills that are within the Farm Bill, a mechanism for the Bill Emerson Humanitarian Trust, and to lower the barriers for folks to access that fund and to use that money for the good program that the Farm Bill is trying to accomplish. So let's look at what Bread names, and I think this is accurate for everybody, for a lot of people at least, the 3 goals for the 2023 Farm Bill. And essentially, these 3 goals are health, equitability, and sustainability in the food system, So looking at nutrition, the fresh fruits and vegetables into food deserts and the food swamps. Looking at equity, and there's some specific items that they name. One, eliminating the ban for people that have drug-related felony convictions. Number 2, eliminating the 5-year ban on lawfully present immigrants. And number 3, eliminating the SNAP work requirements for qualifying college students. So it's interesting, a lot of college students don't have access to SNAP benefits for different reasons. And one of them is sometimes they have work requirements. And for some college students, that's not a possibility for them to be working and while they're in school. And it's been interesting. One of the things that I read is that college hunger has been on the rise in recent years. And because there has been a lack of access to SNAP for college students, there have been colleges that have been opening up food pantries on their campus to help feed their students because they don't have access to the food resources that are out there. That's not equitable and not right. And then the third piece is around sustainability or climate, and how can we do more to tackle food waste and food recovery so that we're not in the US throwing away 40% of our food, but we're actually using the food that we have and making sure it gets into the hands, mouths, and bellies of those who are most in need. So I want to dive into those three just a little bit deeper. So around nutrition, I already mentioned, and I want to talk about them specifically as they relate to Ohio, to kind of connect this to a little bit closer to home. So diabetes and other diet-related health costs in Ohio were estimated at about $50 billion in 2017. And I think it said that something around $12.3 billion of it was specifically related to diabetes. So a significant amount of money is going because of some of these health-related, these food-related health inequities. About 12% of the adult population in Ohio have been diagnosed with diabetes in 2020, and it's the 8th leading cause of death here in the state. Another note about nutrition, there are in Ohio, about 65% of the families that access SNAP benefits in Ohio have children, and about 40% of the families either have elderly or people with disabilities. So the benefits of SNAP, of food stamps, of getting food, is affecting those most vulnerable in a significant way, those most vulnerable in our population. And it's also notable that about 1 in 11 workers, so 1 in 11 people who are employed, are accessing, are being helped by food benefits, helped by SNAP benefits. So one of the things that BREAD advocates is strengthening SNAP through the expansion of the GUSNIP, which is the Gus Schumacher Nutritional Incentive Program. And through that, SNAP benefits are able to increase their purchasing power for nutrient-dense foods and vegetables. So where a dollar might be worth $1 at a grocery store for some non-perishable items, it might be worth $2 or $3 when it's used to purchase nutrient-dense food. So improving the way that money can help go further to support those nutrient-dense foods. And one other note in Ohio to note is that in Ohio, the benefits of SNAP reduced poverty in our state by 1/3. It brought over 500,000 people out of poverty by accessing these benefits. So it has a significant nutritional and economic benefit to people. Next, on sustainability. Again, the food waste is significantly problematic, both in not feeding people and the effects that it has on the environment. Notice that statistic, that every year the average family of 4 wastes about $2,000 on food that is purchased but never eaten. And that food amounts to about 2.4 million tons of food that is wasted instead of going to feed hungry people. So it's a significant amount of food that we're wasting. And the last is, again, on equity, about how food systems are often designed to perpetuate, racial and economic injustice. There are lots of different discrimination points in the system, including in some of the farming associations and some of the USDA offices. And this really limits, we talked about this earlier, about the declining number of Black farmers and the small number of Hispanic and Native farmers. And a lot of the historic and present day policies have perpetuated that institutional racism that has led to some of these practices. One note in Ohio. In Ohio, we are about 77.7% white, but about 98% of the farmers are white, and they occupy 99% of the farmland. So less than 1%, if you do the math, that means that of all the minoritized groups, Black, Hispanic, AAPI, Native, they combined represent less than 1% of the farmland in our state. So there's significant racial inequity and injustice that exist as well. What are we going to do? How are we going to address this? How are we going to fix this? Well, there's a few different things we're going to talk about. The first one that I want to mention, and this specifically is one of the key programs from Bread for the World, and that is the offering of letters. We'll get to these a little bit later on, but we have some of the sample letters that we can use here tonight and that are available online as well. But if you go to the Bread's website, bread.org/OL, offering of letters, you can find a whole wealth of resources that can help you in your advocacy in addressing the Farm Bill and all the different you see there's letters, there's fact sheets, instructions on how to reach out to people, all kinds of really great things, all kinds of resources. A lot of the facts that I just mentioned about Ohio, I found from those state seats. There's one for every state. So there's information for you, there's information for your friends and wherever they are in the country. So this offering of letters is a really great way to do advocacy and to reach out to our elected officials. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more later on. I'm going to skip ahead. You can skip. That's just a list of all the different folks who work for bread in this world. So that's where things sit nationally, and a little bit about where things sit on the state level. What we thought as a planning committee was really important was to not only have an understanding about what is happening on a national, international level, but also to have a really good grasp about how these different aspects, food, farming, and foreign aid, come to play and how they work here in our state. And so finally, for those of you who don't like hearing me talk, you're going to hear some other people come up and share some of their wisdom and do a great job of talking about those three things. So as I'm introducing them, I'm going to invite Brother Nick, Marianne, and Pam to come up here and join me on stage. And I'm going to do a real brief introduction to those three folks, and they can tell you a little bit more about themselves as they get started. So first up is going to be Brother Nick Renner, who is a precious blood brother who lives up in the northern part of our archdiocese. He's a farmer, and he's also a member of our Northern Catholic Rural Life office. After he's done, Marianne Bressler, who is the parish and community engagement coordinator at Catholic Charities Southwestern Ohio, is going to come up and speak. And she wears a number of different hats. I don't even know why she has this job title, because she seems to do like everything, including that. And one of the big things that she does a lot is helping out on the Food for All program. It's run by April Hoke. She wasn't able to join us. And so Marianne's here to speak in her stead and talk about the food aspect here locally. And then the third person to speak is going to be Pam Long. She actually used to work for the Social Action Office. She retired about 5 years ago, and now she is, true fact, a volunteer extraordinaire who serves both on our Social Action Commission and is really involved in our work around Catholic Relief Services. So I'm going to finally step away from the microphone and have Brother Nick and then Marianne and then Pam come up and talk to you. Brother Nick.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, I am from the northern part of the diocese, near Salina, Ohio. Way up north, still in the diocese. I came to the community, to my religious community, who farmed from the very beginning. And when I came there 60 years ago, all the food was raised right on the farm there, except I think flour and sugar. We had our meat, dairy, chickens, eggs, big garden, 10 acres of potatoes, and so forth. It has changed. It really has changed. I still have a passion for farming, even though I stopped farming when my partner in crime passed away, 2006. So I farmed for 43 years in the community. We farmed 1,100 acres, tillable corn and beans and wheat, soybeans, alfalfa, hay, and so forth. 215 acres of hard woodland. To tell you that I'm from the farm, I love the farm. I have 3 brothers that farm also, not with me, but they farm farther north. And I got 3 nephews. So I think and I dream and I have a passion for farming. And it's in my blood from my dad, I guess, way back. So I'm here to talk about the farm aspect and the farm bill. One I want to bring up is the insurance, crop insurance policy we got. Farmers are taking tremendous risk with this climate change. Believe it or not, we all notice it when we farm, how extreme the weather patterns are. Too dry, too warm. The ground is getting so warm, the biology of the soil don't even work well for some of the microbes and fungi, the worms. Some of that is really, we noticed, is really being affected by the extreme heat and the change in the climate. So we have to protect the farmers. If we have no farmers, we have no food. 50 years ago, we had, nearly half the people were farmers. And now when you work numbers and look at statistics, it shows like we're about 1.5%. So we're carrying a big load here, a lot of responsibility to feed people. And we want to feed people with plenty food, good food, and safe food. That's Catholic social teaching, and I believe in that very dearly and how we do things. Another factor with this farm bill, we need to have a higher insurance rate is the flex in our inputs, our seeds and our fertilizers when Russia invaded the Ukraine. It just drove our prices triple. Where did that come from? How do you budget for something like that? Fertilizers went way off the chart, way up there, and seeds and fuel went way up. So that and the climate, all these things have an effect. It's not a problem. Farm bill is not just for us, it's for the world, really, in the United States. And what happens any place in the world affects us. It's a global market out there. I mean, truly, we buy most of our nitrogen from foreign countries, so it's just a global market, and a lot of things can happen out there. Spain has gone through a real heavy drought right now. The Ukraine can't move grain right. Out in western Kansas, where we have 5 farms that I manage out there, the worst drought in history, in recorded history, and southwestern Kansas. So a lot of things are moving, and we tried to adjust to it, but we need to move that policy from 9% to 11 or 12% of an insurance policy. We need to move that up to protect the farmers, because there are only a few of us out there. And a lot of times we're the older people. I don't know where the young ones are at, because it's tremendous amount of money we work well with. Another farm bill policy I think we need to improve on is the conservation program. How do we take care of our soils, the land? We got into such big farming that we're just tilling our soil and burning off the organic levels, methane going up in the atmosphere from every tillage pass. It burns off the organic, and our organic in our area in West Central Ohio, out of the wood land that's never been touched, maybe 5.5% to 6% organic. And truly, we have a lot of it down to 2% and 3% organic levels. We can buy nutrients to do that, but the organic soils, the biology of the soil would do most of that work for us. And I think it's definitely more healthy food. We know we need to keep working on this conservation program, because look at our lakes and streams. Lake Erie, still the toxic algae bloom is still going up higher. We haven't got that peaked out yet. Grand Lake St. Mary's, which is only 9 miles from our farms, is definitely, we're on a downslide. We're going to figure it out, how to keep more nutrients on the farms, like phosphorus, potash, nitrogen. Topsoil it's gold. 1 inch of topsoil, it takes 200 years to make an inch of topsoil. I know that from experience being out in these fields. When you lose topsoil, you can't create it back. It's just thousands of years of rising and dying of plants that build up our organic levels. And now it's just going so fast with wind erosion, water erosion, tilling the ground too much, disturbing it. We need to keep working on that sort of thing. We need to keep looking at other policies. Again, I think we need a lot more education with the biology of the soil. We should have, actually, in a farm bill someplace that we can educate ourselves with the biology of the soil. How does the soils work? My whole life was phosphorus, potash, nitrogen, and farm. That was about it. And now we're into starting to learn biology. How does the soil work? How do we protect the soil? There's so much life in the soil, which I never knew most of my years. But just all that working together is a perfect unit. And if we keep disturbing it and we keep losing that organic, it's going to keep going downhill. Another policy I'd like to see improved, which is only like 1%, and that touches a lot of other things, is our woodland. And I'm not trying to talk in a selfish way here, but we do have 215 acres of hardwood woods out there, hardwood lumber and trees. It's very native to the land, and we've never taken a half acre out in the 60 years I've been there. Not knowing why for sure, but knowing that Mother Nature put all that out there in wood, and certainly we have to let some not being disturbed, but there's no programs to save our woodland. So when I buy a farm, people buy farms, they got to clear the woodland off, so they can make the numbers work, so they can keep farming. So my taxes are higher than, I lose money every year in my woodland. I log some, but literally there's no money in our woods up there. So we need policies to hold on to that. We need that in the Farm Bill. Another thing we need to touch on is stabilizing the small rural towns and communities. People are moving to the city because they can't farm. A few people with big machinery are farming the land. But we need policies in the Farm Bill that we can have industries in these small communities, other manufacturing, other than agriculture, to have factories so we can keep these people in the rural areas where they want to live and raise their families. They're used to that. That's what they know. We need policies that we can get industries in our rural areas. We are asked to feed more people in the world than ever before. Is that correct? We got more people. And each year we have less land to farm. There's all kind of numbers out there, like 2,000 acres a day in Ohio we're losing for development of all kinds. Maybe we have to look at that. Maybe there's other ways we can save this productive farmland. Gold out there, we're just taking it and putting concrete over it and buildings. Yes, we need room for everybody, but maybe we need to study this a little bit better. Every time I see a 40-acre field go again, look at all that corn, soybeans, and food we could, so we need something in the Farm Bill to protect that. Another thing is I'm for solar panels, but I sure hate to see 1,200 acres in our area go into solar panels. You take 1,200 acres times 230 bushel corn, that's how much less we're going to have, So I think all that needs to be looked at, all that needs to be balanced out. And I think a lot of study that we need to put into these sort of things. So farming is not about me, about us. It's not about this generation. When you farm in a stewardship way, you should think 100 years out. How about my grandchildren, great-grandchildren? When we lose that topsoil into our lakes and oceans and the Gulf of Mexico, all that, that's gone. That's food. That's healthy food. All your micronutrients. It's hard to replace all those from the store. So we got a lot of work to do on the agriculture part. So respect the farmers, help us with a Farm Bill that we preserve the land for future generations. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. So as Andrew said, I'm Mary Ann Bressler, and I work at Catholic Charities Southwestern Ohio. I've been there about 2.5 years. And I am lucky that in my job, I do get to do a lot of different things. And one of the things that I do is I help at our Food for All pantries. And these are mobile pantries. So we go out to different locations. The Free Store brings a truckload of food out. We unload the food, we serve the food, and then we clean up and we leave. So these aren't standing pantries. So we only serve once a month. in 5 counties in the southeastern part of the Archdiocese. So Adams, Brown, Clinton, Claremont, and Highland counties. We do actually have one pantry in Hamilton County down at St. Joe's Church in the West End, and that is a produce pantry. So the only thing that we provide down there is produce, because if you've been in that area, you would know probably that there are a lot of pantries down there, but they typically serve shelf-stable food, and produce is harder to come by. So we do produce down there. The other pantries, we try very hard to provide them with produce, and actually Anthem Insurance underwrites produce for our pantries, which we are very grateful for, because we have a limited budget, and especially lately, the food has become a lot more expensive. Another thing we do is we provide power packs to some of the schools in Cincinnati and also to Sardinia Elementary. So the schools that we do power packs for are St. Francis de Sales, Holy Family, St. Clement, Francis Seraph, St. Martin of Tours, and St. William. And somewhat related to this, and also because my job includes practically everything, I also sit on the Brown County Food Council. And so it's been very educational for me, because I don't really bring a whole lot of knowledge to that table, but I've really learned a lot more about the needs of people in these counties. Just to kind of highlight where we're serving the food, the rates of poverty in these counties, Adams County is the 5th poorest county in the state of Ohio. So the poverty rate there is 19.7%, which is pretty astonishing. The other ones are a little bit lower, but still quite a bit of poverty. And kind of added onto the poverty is a lack of transportation. So people have to travel a distance because there are also very few grocery stores. So I kind of just did a Google search just to give you all a sense of how few grocery stores there are in these counties. So in Adams County, there is 1 Walmart and 2 Save-A-Lot, and those are the only major grocery stores. There aren't even a lot of small mom and pop stores in those counties. Whereas like if you look at Hamilton County, we have about 21 Kroger stores and 10 Walmarts, plus, a plethora of other grocery stores. So people do not have a lot of options for where they shop for food. And again, because a lot of them don't have reliable transportation and there is no public transit, they are really limited in their ability to obtain food. A lot of the people who come to our pantries, which are drive-through pantries, will pick up for sometimes 2 or 3 other families who just can't make it there. So, the idea of a food desert is truly a reality in these counties. Andrew mentioned food swamps, which is more like what Hamilton County is, but these folks really do not have access to quality, nutritious food. And so what we witness a lot of from our clients are nutritional problems. There's a lot of obesity. There is an incredible amount of diabetes. When I help at the pantry, sometimes I'll get to be the person that goes around and checks our guests in. And it is just heartbreaking to hear the stories of health-related deaths that people will tell me, well, my dad died a month ago and my brother died a week ago, or just people who, talk about their diabetes a lot, heart issues, just so many health issues that certainly would be a lot less severe if they had good, nutritious food. We do, I wanted to mention this because Andrew mentioned, the food waste that we see in our country. And we do have some really great partners in our work. And one of the partners is La Soup, which rescues produce and other food items and makes it into soups. And they've been donating soup to us for quite a while. And another organization called Last Mile Food Rescue that rescues food in the Cincinnati, Hamilton County area primarily, but who've been trying to work with us to see if they can start getting us some food also. So we are very grateful to them. I don't think people always know exactly how pantries work. So we actually have to purchase most of our food from the free store. And obviously it's at a greatly reduced rate, but it does cost us money. And unfortunately, we've sort of seen a lot less food available at the free store lately for reasons I'm not quite certain about. And the food has become more expensive at the same time that the COVID increase in SNAP benefits went away. So as of, I believe it was March 1st, people went back to the pre-COVID benefits for the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And I mean, I've had people in the lines tell me that their benefits are down to $25 a month, which is not going to buy you very much food in this day of inflation. So the Farm Bill really does provide great assistance to our program. Besides people receiving SNAP, there's the Emergency Food Assistance Program, which is sometimes referred to as TFAP. And that is the entity of the government that provides the funds to Second Harvest, which then come to the Free Store Food Bank. And that's where we receive the food for our pantries. So we benefit from that funding. We are also able to provide commodity supplemental food program boxes in Clinton County, which is boxes that go to elderly people. So we've got about 30 people in Clinton County who get those boxes from us every month. And just to give you a sense of how many people we are serving, in the last 12-month period, we served 23,122 people at our pantries. And that was 10,294 families. So it's an extraordinarily large number. And a lot of our guests are elderly people. So a lot of the households are either, an elderly person, an elderly couple. Sometimes it's, grandparents living with grandchildren or living with their children. But that's been a reality of our area, is that elderly people in those counties are really struggling to get their food. So it is an honor to serve them. It is a pleasure to serve them. If any of you are interested in volunteering for our pantries, I feel compelled to ask you to talk to me after the presentation, because it is a gift to be able to help people in any way that we can, to provide them with some of the food that they very much need. And I wish that April were here, because April is a fountain of knowledge about these pantries that I am not. But I think that gives you kind of the general idea of what we're doing and why we're doing it and why the Farm Bill. And I would add that, in addition to the Farm Bill providing the food assistance, that these people are living in the areas that Brother Nick was just talking about. They are living in agricultural areas, growing food, and yet have a difficult time feeding themselves and their families. And so there is something very distressing about that fact. So we are happy to continue providing that food until perhaps the happy day arrives when we don't have to. And I certainly look forward to that day. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you very much for inviting me to share an international perspective on the proposed Farm Bill for 2023. The observations that we're going to make this evening are based on information from CRS, Catholic Relief Services, and also from their on-the-ground experience. CRS, just to give you, most of you probably already know this, but just to make sure, CRS carries out the commitment of the bishops of the United States to assist the poor and vulnerable overseas. So you may know Catholic Relief Services because of rice bowls. They have the little calendars they're given out during Lent. The rice bowl program actually started, or actually CRS started during World War II, in the middle of World War II, to aid migrating and displaced families in Europe. Today, CRS touches the lives of 190 million people in over 100 countries. The second way that you may know about Catholic Relief Services is through their annual second collection and also through their special collections that they have during the year whenever a natural disaster strikes, like the earthquakes that happened in Syria and in Turkey. So let's take a bit of time to frame the international part of the Farm Bill. Andrew already did a lot of that with the Bread for the World keynote, but just a couple of things to go into. We start by looking at some old good news. And that old good news was from 1990 to 2014. The world made tremendous progress in reducing the number of people who were hungry or malnourished. But, and here comes the bad news. In recent years, many of those important and life-saving gains have been reversed due to conflict, climate change, COVID-19, and rising food costs. The United Nations World Food Program tells us that there are 349 million people who are experiencing crisis or worse levels of acute food insecurity and malnutrition. It's a magnitude of hunger that our world has not seen before. Regions experiencing the effect of climate change are seeing families that are forced to migrate in search of food. Then there's conflicts over land and resources, followed by disruptions of local food, livestock, and crop production. Today, CRS collaborates with partners on the ground to respond to the immediate needs to prevent potential famine and loss of income and family livelihoods, and to build up resilience for the future. And it sounds like the perfect crossroads for Catholics to bring their faith to the chambers of Congress, don't you think? Pope Francis emphasized the need to act in his World Food Day message in 2021. He said, "Overcoming hunger is one of humanity's greatest challenges." Because CRS takes to heart Jesus's teaching to feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, and love our neighbor, CRS continues its partnership alongside Congress to enact timely legislation to address global hunger and support the implementation of U.S.-funded emergency and development food security programs around the world. And as we learned earlier tonight, the Farm Bill is this 5-year legislative package of both domestic and international food and agriculture programs. CRS is focusing its advocacy on the foreign trade and international food aid programs, specifically, as you can see on the screen, Food for Peace Title II, McGovern-Dole Food for Education, Food for Progress, and Farmer to Farmer. Food for Peace is a 65-year-old program that delivers U.S.-sourced agricultural commodities, as well as cash, vouchers, and locally procured food for people living in crisis. The idea is to allow people to receive enough food to survive and then keep them from having to migrate in search of food or sell off critical goods like seeds or livestock. I had the good fortune of being able to travel with Catholic Relief Services to the Western African nations of Burkina Faso and Mali. And here is the next picture when we talk about livestock. These are pigs, and they are ready for market. And you might go, oh, those pigs don't look pretty skinny. You know, what's going on with them? But these were what they had to be able to sell for people to eat. And so that's really important to be able to know that. So the pictures that I have here are examples that kind of relate to these programs. And so I'll share them with you throughout this. The other 4 programs are also can you back up one? It's the McGovern-Dole program. And that particular program is on for education in order to provide food in schools, and also it does other things for mothers and children. And the idea there is to make sure that they are able to get an education, particularly for young women, and also to be able to go ahead and continue into literacy and those particular features. Food for Progress is another one that works mostly in the international program for getting aid and people to be able to buy and sell food and produce that way. And then the Farmer to Farmer program is there to be able to send people who are farmers themselves, who are in agribusinesses, who are economists, who are able to go and travel overseas and be able to meet people and give and share their experience with them in order to help raise their abilities that way in their economy. And so those are the 4 programs. The Catholic Relief Services is asking for increases in Food for Peace and the McGovern-Dole Food for Education. And actually, they're asking for increases on all 4 programs, but the top 2, they're also asking for some flexibility, because once they authorize a particular bill and they say, we're going to spend money on this, you have to spend that money exactly as it's been authorized. And so CRS is in the field and being able to see if we were able to help maybe farmers learn new ways, new practices, they would be able to sustain themselves and do even more after that award ends. So they're asking for those kind of changes in those bills so that they have that flexibility and basically to help people on the ground, you know, grow more in their ability to provide for themselves. So if you, what we're going to do then go forward. Yeah, this is a program that we saw in Burkina Faso. They were teaching people about how to grow rice there, a product that they had never grown before. The gentleman on the left is from CRS. His shirt also tells you that he is with USAID and also Caritas International. And he's explaining how this particular new rice field is getting started. To the right is a woman who is learning how to be a farmer for the first time ever. And so she's learning about doing a rice crop. And that was very important because now she can be able to help her family and so that they are able to grow food for themselves and also to sell it in the market. That makes a huge difference for her family. The next slide. This is a berm that is in the rice field. So basically that way they can flood an area and be able to get water to the rice plants. They allowed us to walk along this berm. And what was wonderful is I'm walking along the berm and I see a patch of straw up ahead. And from my way of thinking, that's kind of an, you know, a sign like the straw is here to kind of slow you down so you don't slip and slide on some wet spot on the berm. I did not understand that it was actually a sign, do not step here. But I stepped there and it was a hole. And so I put my foot into it, fell backwards into the rice field, thereby creating my very own rice bowl. And so it was a great experience to be able to do that. Once they pulled me out and got me dusted off and everything, they said, oh, you're so lucky. This year, this is the first year, but next year we're going to put dead leeches in it. And I'm going, yes, I was lucky, wasn't I? So I was very pleased with that. We'll go on to the next slide. This is in Mali. In this particular place, we were witnessing a number of different things. One of them, this is a gathering of parents. You can see the moms with the babies in the front row. People who were cooking for the meals at school, and also people who were learning the solar panels and also a water tower that was a big project that they put into this community. And so they're all there to talk about and to say how much this makes a difference in their lives. But the fact is that if it weren't for the food at school, some kids wouldn't be sent to school because their parents wouldn't want them to starve. So having food, especially food that would come from an award like the McGovern-Dole, would be something that would be of value to a community like this. Next slide, please. So if you would like to join this movement, Catholic Relief Services has chapters where we do legislative advocacy with members of Congress. And we've already actually done one with the gentleman who was here from Congressman Landsman's office this year. And if you would like to get on Catholic Relief Services website, you can text ACT ACT or ACTUAR, the Spanish word, to 67768. Then they'll, in about 10 seconds, they'll send you a connection and you can share your contact information with them. They only send you an email about once a month, and then any advocacy alerts when your voice is really needed. I would also like to invite you to consider becoming a member of that CRS chapter. The people in our chapter want to use our voices to make a life-giving change for families around the world. We welcome compassionate people who can write an email, listen once a month to a Zoom call, learn about what CRS is doing on the ground, and gain skills while building relationships with elected officials. The emphasis here is on relationships. A lot of people think, oh my gosh, the way you go in to do advocacy is, tell them they absolutely need to change and all of that. But CRS has a much kinder, gentler, humane way of doing it, which is to build a relationship with people and to really talk about the issues and to listen to what they're interested in doing. So that's really a way to respect our human dignity. So we'll go to the next slide. And this was in the same Mali village that we were in. And the children all had sticks with little cards, sheets of paper, said USDA or CRS. And they were trying to thank us, a small group that was there visiting their community. But really, this thank you is for all of you, for people who support these programs and try to help with the Farm Bill, who try to help with Catholic Relief Services in any way they can. So I would invite you then, if you want later on, to go back and take some handouts from CRS. There are some back there also about climate change. And I thank you very much.
So let's open the floor for any questions that anybody might have for me or for Brother Nick or Marianne or Pam about anything that that we have talked about that you might want to get some clarification on or just address it all. So yeah, Linda.
This year, are we getting a lot of pushback from our congressmen and senators?
So I'll say something about this, and then if you guys want to add to this. Right now, I guess what I'll answer is that the process is still very early on. So the House and the Senate Agricultural Committees are the ones that are working on the wording for this massive bill, and nothing has been released yet. So we don't have any clarity yet about what's going to be in there and how elaborate it's going to be, what the changes are going to be. So we don't know that yet. The current Farm Bill doesn't expire until the end of September of this year. And so the suspicion, if this follows previous years, is that it won't kind of come to a head with more debate and discussion until into the summer. And so we're kind of getting ourselves geared up and educated so that as the legislation gets formed and gets released and discussed, then we're going to be equipped and ready to jump up and start answering that call to advocate. So yeah, hold on. Come back. Do anyone you want to add anything to that?
No, that's true. They haven't gotten very far on it yet.
I go back to Sister Christine. She's been doing this for a long time and has been through several iterations of this.
Sorry, I don't go so far and confuse things. Where we are right now is listening sessions that are going on around the country by congressional people. We haven't had one in Ohio yet that I've heard of. So what we're doing tonight, I think, is a prep for that. The letters that we're going to be handing out tonight for you to sign and add to what you heard tonight, what might be of interest to you, will be added to that listening session process that they're going through. So it's really incredibly important that we do that now and let them know what we want in the bill or what we want their attention to. And then it's important for us to follow it up because things are going to shift and change over time. Hopefully we'll be able to keep up to date on CRS websites and our website on what's happening and get some information out to people. But just realize we're just at the beginning. The last time we went through that, it wasn't even decided in 2018. As you can see, it was 2019. It took forever during that. So keep alert to it. But this is important right now to feed them with what we want in the bill and what's important to us. So when you get the letters tonight, there's space for you to write. So it's not a complete thing in the written part we have. So what you heard tonight, add whether it's more on the international, whether it's more on the food security, whether it's more on the farm. But please, please follow up and keep at your our Congress people about this and find out from them where they are on it at this point in time.
Thank you. And I will add on, I think that Senator Brown is on the Senate Agriculture Committee now. And I think he's the first time in 50 years that an Ohio senator has been on the Senate Agricultural Committee. I know that because Sister Sally Duffy forwarded me an email that he sent to her in response to some of her advocacy already on the Farm Bill. So he's a prime person to reach out to with this advocacy because he's there kind of behind the door where the sausage is being made, so to speak.
I have a question. This may be for, sorry. I've heard a lot of things that for farmers, there is a thing in the Farm Bill about subsidies for farmers. Do you know anything about that?
This question is about farm subsidies.
There is a subsidy when the prices get too low. When they get lower than their the inputs and so forth. There is a bottom line if you belong to the farm program in your county. So you have to sign up for the farm program if it falls that way. So there is that there.
Thanks, Nick.
Hi, I'm Julie, and I'm another member of the CRS chapter with Pam, but on this relationship building, you were talking about Senator Brown, and we met with Wes King, his aide, and he was building relationships and telling us that I think Senator Brown is now the chair of the Hunger Caucus. Did you know that? Which I think is exactly what we're talking about here with the Farm Bill and our own things. So in fact, we were advocating, but I think maybe he was sending it right back to us. So that's the importance of being open to what they say and know a little bit more about that and relating to them on a personal level. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's true, like Pam said, in general, advocacy doesn't need to be adversarial and doesn't need to be controversial. It can be coming in and getting to know people, building relationships, talking to them. I'll tell you, I think the reason that Senator Landsman had a person here tonight, I called all of our archdiocesan Congress people, and I think that one of the other people has some of their territories in Columbus, and they're going to go to the Columbus one. But I think the reason that Congressman Landsman person was here is because I went and saw him in DC a couple months ago. And so we've established a relationship and knows my name. And so to talk about these kind of things and show up for something. When I was there talking to him, it had nothing to do with this, but now that he knows me and knows my name, and I invited him to come to this, he come to these kind of things. So this is the process. And like Sister Christine was saying, starting this early and doing this now, getting your name out there, letting Senator Brown, letting our Congress people know, and Senator Vance, that this is something important to you and what you'd like to see in this really helps to guide this process as we move forward. This is true for any kind of advocacy, but for specifically as it relates to the Farm Bill, getting out there now and laying that groundwork so that even if what you want isn't in there, you've established that relationship and you can follow up with them and say, hey, I reached out to you about this 2 months ago and I see that this is coming up for a vote now. I want to encourage you to support this or go in this way. So.
A question about agribusiness, the big farms, cattle, poultry, those big farms. Do they also get a subsidy from the government, or is that subsidy due to the criteria you talked about?
I don't know if I can answer that exactly, but most of our food now is corporate, like your dairies, that's pretty well corporate, hogs, chickens, everything, turkeys. There's a big turkey area in our area with processing 35,000 birds a day. I couldn't answer that question exactly, but the farmer itself, he owns the barn. And if you build a new barn right now, it'll take you 20 years to get it paid for. By that time, it's pretty well worn out. And then you don't own the birds, you do the work, and you get a certain percentage of the profit. Hogs are that way. You can't hardly sell hogs unless you go through some type of a corporation. A private farmer to industry is not there much anymore when it comes to livestock. And even they got into the dairy quite a bit.
Thanks. And I don't know all the details, but I do know that there's been a lot of controversy about that, about big major farms getting money to do the work that is in a lot of ways putting out of business the small market farmers and causing a lot of challenges in that. But there's two sides to every story, but I know that's been some of the controversy that's come up. I think Sister Christine had something to comment on the last question, maybe.
Just wanted to follow up on the question about the mega operations. One of the big issues we've always been fighting within the Farm Bill is to assure that more subsidies are available for small and moderate-sized farms. This has always been a losing battle in many ways because the desire is to grow bigger and better still since the 1950s. So if you can put a word in also for that, because that has to do with what Brother Nick referred to as farming communities. The small town communities are dependent on agriculture for their economy. And as those disappear, so does the economy. So it's all connected with the Farm Bill, with rural development, with subsidies available for the smaller operations and the moderate size operations. The mega ones really don't need the money, but they get it.
Give some context. Sister Christine has been working in the rural communities for decades in Ohio and Michigan and around. So she's got a lot of experience and a lot of wisdom when it comes to this. So I think we have a question from one of our online participants.
So from Chris online, will the Archdiocese send sample letters?
That is a great question that before I answer it real quick, simple answer, yes. But before I get into it, are there any other questions from the audience or anything else from the panel that you'd like to say to add on to this? In that case, I'm going to let Brother Nick and Marianne and Pam sit back down in their seats. Thank you all very much for your wisdom and contributions. So how I will answer that question by way of transitioning to the next part of our presentation is that this work for the Farm Bill is a way for us to live out our faith, right? We talked about what it means to be people of faith and how doing the work around the Farm Bill is a way for us to live that out and to help to ensure dignity, help to ensure community, and help us to make sure that we're taking care of the poor and the vulnerable, taking care of the earth, taking care of the farmer. So it's very comprehensive. So advocating around the Farm Bill is one of the key ways that we can practice the corporal works of mercy and be involved in solidarity and caring for the poor and vulnerable. The Farm Bill is a piece of legislation that works to feed hungry children. It supports our farmers of all races and backgrounds who work on the land day after day, month after month, year after year to feed all of us. The Farm Bill is a chance for us to support our sisters and brothers around the world who, while so many of us have so much extra and waste so much of it, they go without. Our elected officials need to hear from us, and they need to hear from those on the ground. Those of us who are here, the tireless nonprofit community, our families of parishes, Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Rural Life, and so on, all those folks who are on the ground, meeting with people, talking with people, and knowing their experiences and knowing how important this support and these resources are. So what I'd like to offer you, for those of you that are here in person, when you signed up by Sister Christine, there's a collection of some papers, some backgrounders, fact sheets from Bread from the World that are there. And as Pam mentioned, she also brought some information from CRS that's available. You can pick up on the way out if you didn't get it on the way in. Well, for those of you that are joining online, there is on the bottom of our call to action website, which I think Joy might have posted that link into the chat, or will be doing that. You'll find all of the things that are here minus the CRS pieces, but you can find those on the CRS website. All the pieces that are available here, as well as the sample letters, are on the call to action website for from our archdiocese. So Pat Hornschmeyer is back there now with a collection of letters. There are about 30 of both kinds, the representative and the senator letters. And these are letters that actually our committee, specifically Sister Christine and Kenny, I think Kenny's last name, Davies, thank you, he's a CCHD intern in Columbus, worked to pull these letters together. So there's sample letters for both senators and representatives, and you can just simply write your senator or representative's name, your name, add a few key statements like Sister Christine mentioned, and then you can mail them off. If you want to mail them off, have us do it. You can leave them with us and we can mail them for you. You can also, of course, find the names and addresses of your elected officials if you don't know them, or you can also send the letters and make phone calls afterwards. So Pat has those letters back there, which you can either pick up now or pick up on the way out. Or if you want to raise your hand, Pat can bring some to you as well. But there's letters for both senators and representatives that you can send out. The last thing before we close in prayer is we only have about just a few minutes before I want to wind up for our time. What I would invite you to do, just those of you online, you can maybe do this via chat, but those of you in the room, talk to the people at your table and either share something that you didn't know or something that you've thought about that you might be able to do to advocate, something that you might be able to do specifically within your community. Now, whatever that community is, whether that's your neighborhood, whether that's your parish, whether that's your family of parishes, your workplace, whatever it is, take 2-3 minutes. If you have any ideas about what you might be able to do, what you might be able to take from this presentation for you to do next step. So just take 3 minutes to think and talk.
The letters that are back there, are those on your website? So that I was thinking, because one thing I could do is to mail out or email out to people, and there's a way to copy that and do that.
Yeah, the letters on our website, you can download them. They're Word documents, so they're editable and you can type things in. And if you download them, you can certainly pass them on to anybody else you want to. For those of you online, you can follow that link, and you'll also find on that call to action page, there's a link where you can find out who your representatives are if you don't know who they are and how to contact them. All right, I'm going to close us up here. Obviously, you can keep chatting beyond the prayer, but I want to just again, express a tremendous word of gratitude to all of you for being here in person and being here virtually. I want to say a special thanks to all of our planning committee who worked really hard together for several months to pull this together. As we pray, I want to pray for the folks in Columbus next week that they have another great event, just like we did tonight, and pray that this is a start for us as a state to mobilize together to advocate for this really important piece of legislation and to do this work that supports every single person in our country and millions of people around the world, and supporting them in having good, healthy food and living good, healthy lives as God intended us. And one other small piece. This presentation again came from Bread for the World. In addition to the offering of letters, they've also got a function on their website where you can just go and kind of sign a petition as well and do some of the things online as well. So they've got some other good resources to check out on their website. So both CRS and Bread for the World have lots of great opportunities. For our closing prayer, this is an oldie but a goodie for those of you who are old school social justice people. You'll know this prayer from Bishop Ken Utner in Saginaw, Michigan. It's called Prophets of a Future Not Our Own. It's sometimes connected to Bishop Romero. He never said these words, but it obviously captures his spirit. But Bishop Ken Utner wrote this back in 1979 it was actually a service honoring some of the priest who had passed away, but I think a lot of the messages fits really well with what we're talking about today. So in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. It helps now and then to step back and take a long view. The kingdom is not only beyond our efforts, it is beyond our vision. We accomplish in our lifetime only a tiny fraction of the magnificent enterprise that is God's work. Nothing we do is complete, which is a way of saying that the kingdom always lies beyond us. No statement says all that could be said. No prayer fully expresses our faith. No confession brings perfection. No pastoral visit brings wholeness. No program accomplishes the church's mission. No set of goals and objectives include everything. This is what we are about. We plant the seeds that one day will grow. We water seeds already planted, knowing that they hold future promise. We lay foundations that will need further development. We provide yeast that produces far beyond our capabilities. We cannot do everything. And there is a sense of liberation in realizing that. This enables us to do something and to do it very well. It may be incomplete, but it is a beginning, a step along the way, an opportunity for the Lord's grace to enter and do the rest. We may never see the end results, but that is the difference between the master builder and the worker. We are workers, not master builders, ministers, not messiahs. We are prophets of a future not our own. Amen. So I invite you, be prophetic, be a worker, plant seeds, water seeds, do this work that has been going on for years and years. Stand on the shoulders of our forefathers and foremothers who led before us, and do this work to help create a more just and more equitable world that honors the dignity of all people. Thanks for being here.